Om Swastiastu. Hello everyone, how are you today? I hope all of you are in the good condition. Before we start to the material, I want to introduce our group first. There is me, Ida Ayu Madecasya Casya Pramananjani, and the second is Niputu Jayanti Sri Lestari, and the third is Pande Made Oka Krishna, and the last one is Nimade Mita Oktarian. In this video, I want to tell about the material for methods, communicative language teaching or CLT, and the last is text-based learning or TBL. First material is for methods. For methods developed in the 1970s and 1980s are often considered together. Individually, they are rarely used exclusively in mainstream teaching. In different ways, their influence is still felt today. And in the classic form of community language learning, a knower stands outside a circle of students and helps the students say what they want to say by translating, suggesting, or amending the students' utterance. And the students' utterance may then be recorded so that they can be analyzed at a later date. Students, with the teacher's help, reflect on how they felt about the activities. Students take on different names and exist in a child-parent relationship with the teacher, and Lozanos calls this infantilization. Dramatic topics are avoided, and at one stage of a three-part procedure, the teacher reads previously studied dialogue to the accompaniment of music. During this phase, there are also several minutes of solemn silence, and the students leave the door silently. And for the atypical total physical response or TPR, this might involve the teacher telling students to pick up the triangle from the table and give it to me, or walk quickly to the door and hit it. And when the students can all respond to commands correctly, one of them can then start giving instruction to the other classmates. James Essers believed that since children learn a lot of their language from commands directed at them, second language learner can benefit from this too. And one of the most notable features of the silent way is the behavior of the teacher, who rather than entering into the conversation with the students, says a little as possible. This is because the founder of the method, Caleb Gategno, believed that learning is the best facilitated if the learner discovers and creates language rather just remembering and repeating what has been taught. The learner should be in the driving seat, in other words, not the teacher. In the silent way, the teacher frequently points to different sounds of the phonemic chart, modeling them before indicating that students should say the sounds. The teacher is then silent, indicating only by the gesture or action when individual students should speak, or they keep trying to work out whether they are saying the sound correctly, and then showing when sounds and words are said correctly by the moving on the next item.
Okay, I will continue the presentation. So now we will discuss about communicative language teaching, as the language theories underlying the audiolingual method and the situational language teaching method were questioned by prominent linguists like Chomsky, 1957, during the 1970th century. When the trend of language teaching pivots its way into classroom, a child is able to produce an infinite number of sentences that she or he has never encountered. This makes the factor of imitation, repetition, and habit formation weak arguments to account for any language learning theory. Like for the first, Shortcomings of Structuralism and Behaviorism. The theories underlying the audio-technical method and the situational language teaching were widely criticized during the 19th and 16th century. Noam Chomsky, for instance, rejects the structuralist view of language and demonstrates that there is a distinction between performance and competence. And then number two, shift toward communicative proficiency, the increasing independence between the European countries necessitated a need for a great effort to teach adults the principal language of the continent. New rules were set in language teaching profession, like the first, the paramount importance of communication aspect of language, and then after that, the increasing interest in meaningful learning, and then after that, the growing centrality of the learner in teaching processes, and then after that, the subordinate importance of structural teaching of language. And then number three, we continue for the national or functional dimension of language. Every linguistic and philosophical interaction, another fundamental dimension of language. The speech exercise shows that we do something when we speak language, like to get things, to counter behavior, to create interaction with others, to express personal feelings, to learn, to create a world of imagination, to communicate information. And beside linguistics, a teaching of language based on communicative proficiency rather than mastery of structure. They describe two kinds of meanings. For the first, national categories like concepts such as time, sequence, quantity, location, frequency. And then the second is functional categories like request first, complaint, invitation. Okay, after that I will explain about the one language competence or language competence. For Chomsky, the focus of linguistics was to describe the linguistic competence that enables speakers to produce grammatically correct sentences, like grammatical competence, sociolinguistic competence, discourse competence, and last one, strategic competence. After that, number 5, I will explain about learning theories according to the communicative approach in order for learning to take place. Emphasis must be put on the importance of these variables, like a communication activities that involves real communication promote learning. Tasks, activities in which language is used to carry out meaningful tasks support the meaning process, and then the meaning language that is meaningful and authentic to the learner boosts learning. Okay, after that I will continue in the syllabus communicative language teaching syllabus organizer, the teaching according to the notional and functional categories of language rather than according to its structures. It concentrates on the following: the first, interaction, using language to communicate, and after that, task, using language to perform meaningful tasks, and after that, learner putting the learning interest needs in the forefront, and then continue the presentation. Merits of CLT. There are many advantages in teaching according to the communication approach, like CLT is a holistic approach. Then CLT provides vitality and motivation within the classroom. After that, CLT is a learner-centered approach. And the last one, in a world where communication or information.
So, thank you for the time. I will continue the presentation. And the next is about criticism. There are several of criticism. The first is about national syllabus was criticized as merely replacing one kind of list, namely a list of grammatical structures, with another list of nations and functions. And the second, the communicative approach focused on the use of language in every situation, or the functional aspect of language, and less on the formal structure. The third, the approach relies extensively on the functional national syllabus, which placed heavy demands on the learners. And the fourth, a major principle underlying this approach is emphasis on learners' needs and interests. This implies that every teacher should modify the syllabus to fit the needs of the learners. And the last is the requirements are difficult. Not all classroom can allow for group work activities and for teaching aids and material. The next is about task-based learning. Task-based learning offers an alternative for language teacher. In task-based lesson, the teacher doesn't predetermine what language will be studied, and the lesson is based around the completion of a central task, and the language studied is determined by what happens as the student completed. I will continue the presentation. The first, why is task-based learning important? Task-based learning is especially conducive to group learning because task-based learning receiving positive feedback from peers and teachers increase confidence and motivation to learn and communicate with others. And student understanding of the language also depends because the realistic context in which they are learning the language is relevant to their personal life. The next material I want to explain about task-based approach. Task-based learning offers an alternative for language teacher and lesson follow a certain step. The first is pre-task. This teacher introduces the topic and gives the student clear instruction on what they will have to do at the task stage and might help the student to recall some language that may be useful for the task. The second is task. The student complete a task in pairs or groups using the language resource that they have. Number 3 is planning. Students prepare a short oral or written report to tell the class what happened during their task group. Number 4 is report. Students then report back to the class orally or read the written report. Number 5 is analysis. The teacher then highlights relevant parts from the text of the recording for the student to analyze. They may ask students to notice interesting features within this text. The teacher can also highlight the language that the student used during the report basis for analysis. Number 6 is practice. Finally, the teacher select language areas to practice based upon the needs of the students and what emerged from the task and report basis. The student then do practice activities to increase their confidence, and make a note of useful language. In this material, I want to explain about advantage for task-based learning. Number one, student interaction is built into the lessons as they need to communicate to complete the task. Number two, student communication skills improve. Number three, student confidence can improve as tasks can mimic real life. Number four, student motivation can improve due to the same reason. Number five, student understanding of language can be deeper as it's used in realistic context. And the next, I want to explain about this advantage for task-based learning. Number one, tasks have to be carefully planned to meet the correct criteria. Number two, it can take longer to plan. Number three, it's also consuming adapting PPP style coursebook lessons. Number four, too much scaffolding in the early stage can turn a task-based learning class into a PPP class. And the last, students can avoid using the target language to complete the task if tasks are not well designed. The second, what is a task versus an activity? Task-based learning uses a lesson structure that incorporates different activities to solve a task. The task can span the length of an entire lesson, or if it's project-based learning, it can take up several lessons to complete. For the example, creating a new presentation, making a video or short movie, writing a piece of text such as a newsletter, article, and others.
Okay, I will continue the presentation again. The next is, what is a task-based activity? A task-based activity is a procedure in which students have to use the target language in order to achieve a specific outcome. The best task-based learning activities reflects real-life situation. So the student can see that the lesson is relevant to their own lives. And the next is, how can you apply a task-based approach to your teaching? And there are two types of kind. And the first is in the physical classroom with a group of 10 until 15 teenagers. The first is greeting and warm up. While the students are settling in, you can play a song that's popular among your students. You can let them sing along if they know the song well. And the second, assign the tasks and give instruction. You can create your own music video in groups of 4 until 5 students using a song of your choice. Everybody has to have a role, from managing the camera to coming up with choreography to performing in the video. And the third, do the tasks. Let students gather in groups and start planning their video. And the last is review. Before the lesson ends, give brief and motivating feedback to the students and praise them for their efforts and their use of the language. Reminds the student to be ready to start filming during the next lesson. And the next is in the online classroom with around 5 young learners. The first, greeting and warm up. Call out each student's name and show each of them a card with a different word on it. And it have each student read their words out loud. And two, assign the task and gives instruction. Make a short story from the words that have been given from the teacher. The third, do the task. The teacher asks, have the student write down the story that they create, and they can then take turns reading it out loud, one sentence at a time. And the last is a review. Praise your students for their efforts and teamwork and applaud their story. Let the students have time for self-reflection and respond to questions. Okay, there are our presentation from group 2. And we want to apologize if we have a mistake during the process. And for the last, I hope you enjoyed to watch this video and see you next time. Om Santi 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 Om.